We're organizing this conference in response to the growing concerns of local communities in the United States and Europe over matters of health, the environment, and the economy. The conference takes the growing global food crisis as a starting point and asks stakeholders to imagine a different future. Our working hypothesis is that the current food crisis is systemic in nature, and that solutions from the past will not allow the global food system to evolve in a sustainable way. As Aaron Wolf, the director of the documentary King Corn, pointed out in his discussion here last night, the situation calls for innovations in policy and infrastructure and rethinking how food is grown, shipped, and distributed locally, regionally, and globally. When we think about how can we foster a global food system that safeguards cultural and biodiversity while providing safe and nourishing food for all citizens, questions of policy and infrastructure are not unimportant. But I question whether they're sufficient. Cultures historically have possessed deeply rooted traditions around food. The industrialization of agriculture and the globalization of the food chain disrupt traditions, obscuring the relationship between humans and their environment. As Eric Schlosser, author of the American book Fast Food Nation, points out, there's been more change in the way we eat in the past 30 years than in the previous 30,000. Our conference explores the consequences of this sweeping transformation with particular attention to the implications for culture. Is there a relationship, as the American poet Wendell Berry suggests, between the modernization of agriculture and the degradation of culture? Deborah Madison, a cookbook author, writes that the more a culture is intact, the fewer cookbooks it produces. The plethora of cookbooks over at Barnes & Noble reveals a deeper crisis, and the cookbook section almost competes with the fiction. For a time, I collected cookbooks. I spent hours poring over pages of recipes, only rarely trying my hand at them. The cookbooks fulfilled a certain longing, not for physical sustenance, but connection. I accessed through the recipes and the lore surrounding them remnants of cultures not my own. The cookbooks nourished me in ways the food available to me did not, and in ways traditional food might have. All of which suggests that the current food crisis is a cultural and perhaps even a spiritual one. We eat today from an unnatural abundance. Food is as plentiful in February as in August, and we pay a high price for that convenience. There's a recognition that what we're dealing with beneath the structural crisis that Aaron Wolf pointed out is something much deeper, and this was the impetus for inviting Satish Kumar as the keynote speaker this morning. When Satish was only 9 years old, he renounced the world and joined a brotherhood of monks. He spent some time amongst the Jains, and after 9 years left and became a campaigner for land reform, working to turn Gandhi's vision of a renewed India and a peaceful world into a reality. He later undertook an 8,000-mile pilgrimage, walking from India to America without money, through deserts, mountains, storms, and snow. During this time, he was passing out packets of peace tea to world leaders. In 1973, he settled in England and took the editorship of Resurgence. He's been the editor for the last 30 years. He's the guiding spirit behind a number of ecological, spiritual, and educational ventures in Great Britain. Satish teaches, lectures, and runs workshops internationally on reverential ecology, holistic education, and voluntary simplicity. I think there's a lesson in Satish's life. The title of his autobiography is No Destination. And I think what that book reveals is that if we have a moral compass, some parameters by which we can make our decisions, and even decisions around what to eat, we don't need something that's external. This can be something that's internal. And so it's our hope that I think what Satish's remarks will do is put the conversations in an ethical framework. The panels today are not intended to be exhausted, but rather to introduce people to some key issues and encourage people to think more consciously about the food they buy and eat. Food choices are increasingly ethical and political choices, and deciding what to eat is therefore one way in which we, as citizens, at least in the United States and most of Europe, can vote with our forks. The future of food is up to us.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your kind invitation and very kind introduction. As you mentioned, the culture of agriculture and a crisis in food and agriculture is a crisis of culture, a crisis of spirit. I grew up in India, as you heard, in my childhood as a monk. And as a monk, I went with a begging bowl in my hand from door to door, begging for food. And if someone gave me the food, I was grateful. And if someone did not give the food, I was also grateful. That was my opportunity to practice equanimity and say to myself that this is a great opportunity for me, given by this person, to fast. So, as a monk and as an Indian, food is sacred. Food is not commodity to be bought and sold. Food is sacred, and our gods in Indian Hindu tradition are connected with the land. Lord Krishna, many of you have heard of Hare Krishna movement. Krishna's other name is Gopal. And Gopal means a cowherd. And his mother was a butter maker. The consort of Lord Rama, called Sita. Sita is born of the soil. The mythology says that as the father Janak was plowing the land, out of the soil came out his daughter, Sita. So, land, agriculture, food, sharing, all that is not only a practical, pragmatic, physical need and activity, but it is also a spiritual practice. Gardening, farming, cooking is a spiritual practice. Now, we have at this moment a number of crises. There is a great scare of swine flu in Mexico. Now, everybody, all the governments, particularly I am coming from England, they are all rushing to create lots and lots of medicine to cure swine flu. But nobody is addressing the issue of the causes of swine flu. The kind of factory farming, the kind of pig rearing in Mexico, where hundreds of thousands of pigs are kept in confinement. That kind of factory farming is miles and miles away from sacred land, sacred life, sacred animals, and sacred food. Food has become a commodity to make profit. Food is not for feeding people. Feeding people has just become a byproduct of making money. Now, not everybody has money. because money is scarce. Even the bankers are now short of money. And they are going cap in hand to governments to bail them out. So President Obama and our Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, are putting billions and billions of dollars and pounds into banks. But the real bank is the Earth Bank. And I say to our government leaders and politicians that you have to put your effort and your investment not in Royal Bank of Scotland, but Royal Bank of Land. Not just remove the Scot, Royal Bank of Land. So we are at a crisis of this kind, and people have no money to buy food. So in the world, if you look just outside, I mean, not even outside the United States, even in the United States, there are soup kitchens and people are without food. In such a hugely wealthy country where so much food, something like 40% of food is wasted. And yet people are without food. But if you look at the world scene, Africa, India, China, and South America, total world scene, there are millions of people without food. Now, why humans have created a system, why we educated, highly educated people have created designed a system, food system, where some people are kept in perpetual hunger. This is only a human phenomena. In the natural world, there is no hunger. There is no starvation. There are 84 million species upon this earth, according to my Jain calculation, and I'm sure Boston University can challenge my figures. 84 million species, according to Jain calculation, species upon this earth. Minus human species, all the other species are fed, watered, nourished, sheltered, without any assistance from Monsanto, without any assistance from supermarkets, without any assistance from banks. So nature is bountiful, abundant, provides so much that everybody, the birds, the bees, the lions, the tigers, the snakes, the insects, the worms, everybody is fed. All beings are fed, but human beings are not fed. Because our system is designed in such a way that food is not for feeding or sharing. Food is to make money. That has to change. If you want a true future for food, for whole of humanity and whole of the earth, then we have to go back to a basic principle that food is sacred. And food is for sharing. Money, sometimes you need money to exchange food. That's, by the way, I'm not talking about being against money. Money has a place, but keep it in its place. And do not allow it to dominate and come in the way of sharing and feeding people. So we need to create the ecology of food. At the moment, we are trapped in the economy of food, without the ecology of food. And economy without ecology is like walking on one leg. We are limping. Recently, I was invited to speak at the London School of Economics. I'm sure, like Boston University is famous, you know of London School of Economics. You have heard of it. Now, I asked them one very simple, very ordinary question. I said, you are a world-famous university of economics. Where is your department of ecology? You know what their answer was? We don't have one. I said, you know the word ecology and economy? Those two words come from a Greek root, oikos, logos, nomos. What is the meaning of those three words? Oikos means home, planet home, earth home. Home where all are related. Home where all are in relationship, all are connected. Logos means knowledge. So you know the relationships of all the species upon this earth. And nomos means management. Once you know the relationships, you know how to manage it. Now, at London School of Economics, you are teaching these bright, brilliant, smart students from all over the world. They are paying you $50,000 a year to learn how to manage the planet Earth, the planet home, without knowing it. Just tell me, I mean, like a peasant question. I'm asking such a simple question to you coming from India. Tell me how you are going to manage something if you don't know it. If you don't know where your living room is, where your bathroom is, where your garden is, where your home is, how are you going to manage it? If you don't know who your father is, your mother is, who your child is, how are you going to manage the relationships? So ecology and economy are two sides of the same coin. At this moment, when we are discussing about the food in the world, we have forgotten the ecology of food. And no university, it seems to me, whether it's a Boston University or Harvard University or MIT or Cambridge in England or Oxford, these big, big universities, they do not teach anything about the ecology of food or ecology per se. Just economy, economy, economy. Economy dominates our minds. Your former president, Bill Clinton, fighting election, he said, it's economy stupid. I would like to say, is the ecology stupid? I must congratulate Michelle Obama, who has started a garden in the White House. Now, it's a great example for all of us. And a gardening word appeals to me more than farming. When you say farming, it seems like a big farm with maybe hundreds or thousands of acres, with big machinery, full-time farmers working with great capital you need, and lots of fossil fuels. Our production of food, distribution of food, storage of food, selling food in supermarkets, everything from beginning to end, cooking of food, everything is dependent on fossil fuel. And that's a farming. I would like to shift, when we are talking about future of food, from farming to gardening. Then when the moment you say gardening, I can be a gardener, you can be a gardener, we can have a half an acre, we can have 1 acre. Everyone can be a gardener. And I would like to suggest, if we truly want a good future of food, that we all academics and intelligentsia and business people and stock market dealers and bankers, all politicians, congressmen, senators, everybody, we all take part-time gardening and part-time intellectual or other academic work. Well, how about 3 days a week for the Boston University? Students and teachers participate in learning and teaching and academic work for 3 days a week. And the other 3 days a week, gardening. And maybe the moment you become gardener, you pursue some other imaginative, creative work. Like Elizabeth mentioned Wendell Berry. I recently visited him in Kentucky, in his house. And he took me to see his beautiful farm, 100-acre farm. And he still has beautiful working horses. And he's plowing the land with horses. But he also has a little hut where he sits and writes his poetry by the Kentucky River. So you can be a great gardener or a small farmer like Wendell Berry, and a writer and a poet. Why we don't have more writers and poets like Wendell Berry? Because we don't have more gardeners and farmers like Wendell Berry. So if you want to bring out your creativity, your imagination, your poetry, your painting, you have to be close in touch with nature. Nature is the greatest teacher. Nature is the greatest inspiration for poetry and music and art. How will you have Van Gogh if there were no great fields of sunflowers? How will you have Monet and great other artists like him, Impressionists, without those beautiful gardens of Giverny? How will you have nature poetry of Walt Whitman if he was not connected with nature? Why we are lacking in poetry and art and imagination and creativity in our world today? Because we are disconnected with nature and from nature. We have forgotten that we are nature. The idea that we human beings are superior to nature, somehow we have this God-given right to exploit nature for our benefit. Nature is all there for our use and abuse. We are nature, ladies and gentlemen, ourselves. The Latin word meaning of nature is to be born. Birth. When you have a nativity at the time of Christmas, means Christ is born. When you say a woman, a mother, going for a check to the hospital after the birth of a child, postnatal check. The natal word comes from the same root as nature. Natal, native. You say, I'm a native of Boston, meaning I'm born in Boston. So native, even nation, U.S. national, meaning you are born in U.S. So we are born, aren't we? We have forgotten that we are born. Simple forgetfulness. The loss of memory is colossal. That we have forgotten that we are nature. And the moment we realize that we are nature, then what we do to nature, we do to ourselves. We will realize that immediately. The moment we say we are nature, what we do to nature, we do to ourselves. If we are putting pigs in factory farms, we are bound to create swine flu. And if that kind of food we are eating, we are bound to create the kind of food crisis that we have created today. So we need simple answers. It's not a huge, great, academic, complex problem. The answer is simple. The academics have complicated the problem. Any fool can make things complicated. It requires a genius to make things simple. And I would like to ask you to make things simple. And the simple answer is, let all of us, if Michelle Obama in the White House can start a garden, all of us, Boston University should have gardens where students and teachers and academic staff are engaged and touching the soil. And when you touch the soil, you make the hands dirty in the dirt. Dirt is not dirty. Remember, dirt is not dirty. Touch the dirt, touch the soil. And when I have 2 acres in Devon, and I do gardening, I edit the magazine, and I teach at Schumacher College, but my greatest love is my apple orchard, and my garden, and my worms under the soil. I say that if the worms were not working under the soil, there will be no food on my table. We think that worms are just nothing, minute, unintelligent creatures. But day and night, without any holidays, they work under the soil. Day and night, 24 hours, 7 days a week, they are working. So I say, long live the worms. Without the worms, we will have no food. We have to develop, if you want a good future for the food, we have to develop a sense of gratitude. That's a spiritual dimension of food. We have to develop a gratitude to worms, gratitude to nature, gratitude to the soil, gratitude to the trees. The apple trees, which I grow, I have 15 apple trees of various varieties, including a variety called American Mother. And apple tree is my teacher. Where do I learn the lesson of generosity and unconditional sharing and giving? When the autumn comes, the fall, and the apples are ready, anyone can go to the tree And it never asks you, have you come with your American Express card? Apples are free. Take. And never asks you, are you educated or uneducated? You are intelligent or a peasant farmer? You are black or white? You are male or female? You are young or old? You are human or animal or bird or wasp or bees? Whoever you are, take apples. Unconditional love. You don't have to go to study the Bible or Quran or Bhagavad Gita to learn about unconditional love, unconditional giving, unconditional sharing. You go to the tree. Tree is our greatest teacher, even greater than the Buddha. Because even the Buddha learned his enlightenment while sitting under a tree. So, tree of knowledge, tree of life, tree of wisdom, the speaking tree. We have to revere the tree. And when we revere the tree and we revere the soil and we revere the land and we receive the food with gratitude from the land and share it with our friends and our family and even the beggars. My mother would say, before you have your lunch, go out and see if there's any beggar in the street and share some food with the beggar. And don't say, why are you not working, beggar? You are a strong man. Sometimes God comes in the form of a beggar, my mother used to say. And if you are arrogant against the beggar, you are not right to eat your food. Share. Be with gratitude. So, sacred dimension of food, the spiritual dimension of food, is no separate, no different than the economic dimension, the ecological dimension. They are all connected. We have separated and put all these dimensions in separate boxes. We have to liberate our thinking and see in a holistic way, in a holistic approach, that all disciplines are connected, whether they are spiritual or cultural or economic or ecological or political. And if we see in that holistic way, I'm sure we can create and redesign the system of food production and food distribution, which is not dependent on fossil fuel, which is not dependent on importing and exporting. When water from Scotland is exported to France, because French are exporting their spring water to Scotland. What is point of exporting water from Scotland to France and France to Scotland? Because they think that they can make money by exporting water. What is the point of exporting millions of tons of butter to England from New Zealand? And then the English butter, where I live, the Devon, which is a beautiful Devon butter country, our butter is exported to France or Russia or Italy or somewhere else. We have created this economic system which is absolutely crazy. And we say we are educated, highly educated. All these systems are designed by the people who have great degrees from BU and Harvard and Cambridge and Oxford and other great universities. But they are half educated. They have only learned economy and not ecology. And half educated is worse than uneducated, like half-baked bread. So, if we can create a holistic learning, where ecology and economy are two sides of the same coin, when we connect with nature, we connect with the soil, and our learning is not just intellectual, but also sensual, like David Abram we were talking about. David Abram talks about the spell of the sensuous. So, when we are able to learn and absorb and experience our physical connection with the soil and with the earth, and we can connect with the soil, then we can design a political system, an economic system, a distribution system, which is not dependent on fossil fuel and export and import. Economics of place is prerequisite for the economics of the planet. If the place is in ruin, if the place is destroyed, our local economy is destroyed, then the global economy will be in ruins. Global economy cannot be sustained without a strong, powerful, profound local economy. So local food is an imperative for the future of humanity and future of the planet. Thank you very much.